All right, so today we're diving into something I think we all encounter, whether we love it or dread it,
Mm-hmm.
small talk.
Yes.
Personally, I think it gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
You never know where a simple conversation might lead.
It's true. Small talk is often seen as superficial, but it's really the gateway to a deeper connection. It's how we find common ground and build rapport.
Exactly, and today we're going deep with excerpts from New Note and The Art of English Small Talk.
Okay.
One thing that really struck me in New Note was this idea of using time as a framework.
Uh-huh.
They suggest asking questions that delve into the past, present, or future.
That's a fascinating point. It's like expanding the possibilities beyond just talking about what's happening right now instead of the typical, what do you do, which can feel a bit like a job interview.
Right.
You could ask what first sparked your interest in their field.
Ooh, that's so much more engaging. You're not just getting a job title.
Yeah.
You're getting a glimpse into their passions and what makes them tick.
Exactly. It's about uncovering those hidden layers. Or you could even flip it and ask a future-oriented question, like, if you could wave a magic wand and have any job in the world, what would it be?
I love that it's playful, but it also reveals something about their dreams and aspirations.
And what's interesting is that these types of questions can be adapted to all sorts of contexts, from casual encounters to work events.
Speaking of work, Me Note had a bunch of really interesting work-related questions that go beyond the usual. But I have to admit, sometimes I get a little nervous about using work-related small talk, especially in a networking setting.
I understand that it can feel a bit like walking a tightrope. You want to be engaging, but not too intrusive.
Exactly, like New Note suggests asking, what's been your biggest win at work lately?
Yeah.
But what if the person is going through a rough patch? It could backfire.
You bring up a great point. It highlights the importance of reading the room and being sensitive to the context. The Art of English Small Talk actually talks about this, emphasizing the need for awareness of your surroundings and the other person's cues.
So maybe instead of asking about a recent win, you could ask something like, what's the most rewarding aspect of your work?
Okay.
It's still positive, but a bit more open-ended.
That's a great adaptation. It shows you're interested in their perspective without putting them on the spot.
Okay, so we've talked about work, but what about those times when you're trying to strike up a conversation with someone you don't know that well outside of a professional context?
Right.
New Note recommends keeping up with local news,
Yeah.
but I find that tricky.
I can see why news can be a bit of a minefield these days. You never know what opinion someone might have.
Right, you could accidentally spark a heated debate when you were just trying to make casual conversation.
Exactly. The Art of English Small Talk reminds us that small talk is about creating a comfortable atmosphere, not sparking controversy.
So how do we navigate that? Are there safer topics we can rely on?
Absolutely. Both of our sources mention shared interests as a fantastic way to connect. Think hobbies, books, movies, even pets.
You know, I never realized how many shared interest questions are actually time-based. You could ask about someone's favorite childhood book, a movie they saw recently, or even future travel plans.
What's fascinating here is how genuine curiosity plays a key role. If you're genuinely interested in someone's passion for beekeeping or their latest travel adventure, the conversation will flow naturally.
It's like you said earlier, it's about uncovering those hidden layers and finding those unexpected points of connection.
Yeah.
And sometimes the most unlikely topics can lead to the most interesting conversations.
Yeah.
Like travel, for instance.
New Note focused on vacation planning and bucket list destinations. But I think even past travel experiences can be great conversation starters. You could ask, what was the most surprising thing you learned on your last trip?
I love that it invites storytelling and reflection. And who doesn't love sharing travel tales?
It's true, and it can even spark ideas for your own future adventures.
Okay, but let's be honest. Sometimes you're stuck in a situation where you can't really delve into someone's past lives as a lion tamer or their future plans to visit Mars.
Right.
Like, what about those everyday encounters where you're just trying to make a quick connection?
Those moments are still important. And, both New Note and The Art of English Small Talk mention food as a surprisingly effective conversation starter. It's something everyone can relate to.
It's true, you can't go wrong with, have you tried that new cafe downtown? Or even just, what's your go-to comfort food?
What's interesting is that even simple questions like those can open up a world of shared experiences and cultural insights. I once had a fascinating conversation with someone about their grandmother's recipe for a traditional dish, all because we were both ordering the same type of pastry at a bakery.
That's awesome. It shows how food can be a gateway to learning about different cultures and family traditions. And it's so much more interesting than just talking about the weather.
Speaking of the weather, The Art of English Small Talk actually makes a good point about how even something as mundane as the weather can be an effective icebreaker. It's a shared experience that everyone can comment on.
I guess you're right. I tend to dismiss weather talk as filler,
Mm,
but I can see how it can create a sense of camaraderie, especially if you're both sweltering in a heat wave or huddled under an awning during a downpour.
exactly. It's about finding those little points of connection, even in the most unexpected places. But beyond specific topics, the Art of English Small Talk also emphasizes the importance of general small talk etiquette.
Yeah, they had some really practical tips like putting your phone away, which seems obvious but is so easy to forget.
It's a powerful nonverbal cue. Putting your phone away signals that you're fully present and engaged in the conversation.
It's like saying, you have my undivided attention, which is so rare these days. And speaking of being present, they also talk about being genuinely curious. But what does that actually look like in practice?
It's about shifting your mindset from trying to impress the other person to truly wanting to learn more about them. It's about asking open-ended questions that invite them to share their thoughts and experiences.
So instead of just firing off a list of questions like, what do you do? Where are you from? Do you have any pets? You're trying to spark a real conversation.
Precisely, and that's where active listening comes in. The Art of English Small Talk stresses that active listening is crucial for making the other person feel heard and valued.
I've definitely been guilty of just waiting for my turn to speak instead of really absorbing what the other person is saying. What are some ways to be a better active listener?
It's about paying attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues. Make eye contact, nod your head, and use verbal affirmations like, "That's interesting," or "Tell me more," to show that you're following along.
And it's about asking follow-up questions that show you're not just going through the motions, right? Like if someone mentions they love to hike, you can ask about their favorite trails or what they find most rewarding about hiking.
Exactly. It's about digging a little deeper and showing that you're genuinely interested in their perspective. And this ties into another important tip from the Art of English Small Talk, which is to avoid interrogating the other person.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely been on the receiving end of that where it feels like you're being bombarded with questions.
Mm.
Not exactly a recipe for a relaxed and enjoyable conversation.
Right. It's important to find a balance between asking questions and sharing your own thoughts and experiences.
So it's more of a give and take, like a conversational dance, rather than a one-sided interrogation.
Exactly. And this leads to the final tip, which is being mindful of your own conversation dominance.
Oh, this one hits close to home.
Yeah.
I get so excited about sharing my own stories and ideas that I sometimes forget to give the other person space to contribute.
It's a common pitfall. We all have that friend, or maybe we are that friend who tends to monopolize the conversation.
Definitely guilty as charged. But how do you find that sweet spot between being enthusiastic and engaged without accidentally steamrolling the other person?
It's about being self-aware and consciously creating space for the other person to share their thoughts. Pause after you make a point. Ask open-ended questions and resist the urge to jump in with your own story before they've had a chance to finish theirs.
It's like remembering that a conversation is a two-way street, and the goal is to create a balanced and enjoyable exchange for both parties.
Exactly. And I think that beautifully sums up the essence of what we've been exploring today. Small talk, when done well, is about being present, curious, and respectful of the other person.
It's about creating a space for genuine connection, even in those seemingly fleeting everyday encounters.
And those little moments of connection, however brief, can have a ripple effect, brightening our day and reminding us of our shared humanity.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the art of small talk, I feel like we've uncovered some real gems about how to make small talk more meaningful and less, well, small.
Yeah.
We've talked about the power of time-based questions, the importance of context and active listening, and even how seemingly mundane topics like food and weather can be surprisingly effective conversation starters.
Uh-huh.
And we've challenged the idea that small talk has to be superficial. It can be a gateway to deeper connections, cultural insights, and even unexpected moments of joy.
It all starts with shifting our perspective from dreading small talk to seeing it as an opportunity for connection.
Because at the end of the day, we're all just human beings trying to navigate this crazy world. And a little bit of friendly conversation can go a long way.
It's those small moments of connection that can brighten our day and remind us that we're not alone in this journey.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, we'd love to hear from you. What's one small talk question you found surprisingly effective, and why?
Share your insights with us on social media. Let's keep this conversation going and continue to explore the art of making meaningful connections, one conversation at a time.
Until next time, happy chatting.